This is a GE Energy Foreign Material Exclusion Training and Review for the 2015 outage here at Dominion Possum Point Power Block number 6. Our FME outage training objectives are to eliminate the foreign material intrusion into piping and plant systems. We'll define some of the important terms associated with FME. We're going to identify who the FME worker is and other FME personnel responsibilities during this outage. We're going to describe the expectations for the foreign material exclusion during our outage and describe some of the requirements if a loss of integrity, including the drop log, happens to occur. We're going to describe and demonstrate the proper use of FME safety tools. As explained before, our FME goal is based on the site plan, which is based on General Electric's Foreign Material Exclusion Work Instruction. We will use good foreign material exclusion practices during the entirety of the outage. The site objective: prevent the extremely adverse effects that come from allowing foreign material to enter plant machinery when it's open for this outage. This plan will set the clean condition procedures to be observed during the outage. When we think of foreign material exclusion and some of the best practices, let's concentrate on some of the do's and don'ts. Cover all open piping, work, flanges, equipment as soon as it's opened or disassembled. We're going to bag or cover all openings, ideally using the orange FME drawbags. We're going to try to use colored material if we do not have the drawbags available or if they're not appropriate for the covering. FME devices put in place will be logged to avoid them being left in place. On the don'ts, we will not be using clear or metal silver colored material, which could be missed during reassembly. These practices are nothing new to us here at GE. We've been doing them at the previous outages. This looks similar to what we've been doing and we will continue to do during this outage. A good FME program. Some of the responsibilities. The site lead will develop and train all the crew of the requirements. The field engineer will review on a shiftly basis for adequacy of our FME program and the applicability to any upcoming task, especially if new or emergent work comes available. The supervisors will ensure the crew FME training is adequate for the personnel. They will brief the crews on specific FME requirements for their job task. Using the audit log for tool accountability, they will check it at the end of each shift. And if appropriate, they will assign monitors to check the plan compliance and ensure compliance. You may even find that we have monitors to help log the ingress and egress of materials. Some of the responsibility for the FME workers. When we start breaking systems apart, cover all the openings. Cover the piping, cover the open system. Limit the amount of tools you carry towards the FME area and into that FME level 1 area. The idea is if we carry too many tools in, things get knocked in, things get misplaced, we don't have enough room, that's when the accidents happen. Select some of the tools and equipment, the minimum that you need for the job. So it limits the potential for loss into an area. When we transfer or move equipment and tools, try to do them in a way where you avoid that FME level 1 zone. Think about this. Think about the crane moving things for us in boxes and bins or tools. If it were to drop, become dislodged. And if anything is dropped or lost or can't be found, just report it immediately. Let's get it in the drop log. Let's try to find it. Let's try to retrieve it before we carry on. Here's some typical signage and examples of tools we use for good FME protection. The clean area signs, labeling where the entry point are, some plugs. You see one here in the steam valve. You see different plugs for different sizes. We're going to try to avoid bags and rags. Down at the bottom we have the magnetic tape. That's a good one for the bottom of bearing drains. The biggest thing is to enforce the empty pockets rule. Limit the amount of material you take up to the FME area. That will limit the amount of potential that we have to spill anything into the FME area. We try to control the access to designated areas. That helps control any foreign material that is brought into the area, especially from vendors or third parties. They must be trained in our processes also. We want everybody entering and exiting through designated areas. That helps monitor, that helps keep a track of any material in and out. For our 6 Bravo unit, we'll be doing a gas turbine major with the bearings open, the rotor out. Drop log will always be used. All pipings and systems, as they become disconnected, will be covered. Disassembly, cleaning, general inspection, all the general FME practices, the good FME practices that we use every outage. We'll go to that FME level 1 just prior to setting the rotor back into the unit. We will use FME devices and device logs, covers, plugs in the casing, in the bearing areas, and in the appropriate piping. Just another example of good FME practices. When we think about our gas turbine, the level 1, the controlled access, a buffer zone. Level 1 will start at the plane of the compressor turbine, the machine proper, which will include the bearing areas. Just outside of that level 1, you have a buffer zone. You try to limit the amount of tools, material, and personnel that are left in that buffer zone. By limiting the amount of tools and materials in the buffer zone, you eliminate the potential for material to get into your unit. And down here at the bottom, you see our steps, you see our controlled access area. We want to control the access. Now we understand when we have this turbine completely apart, there can be access from the other side, from the inlet, from the exhaust. We'll put up signage and limit people from entering and exiting through those areas. On the 6 Alpha gas turbine, drop log, from the very beginning of the outage to the end. Again, all pipings and systems are covered. Disassembly, cleaning, perform the general FME practices just like we always do. When we go to lift that turbine case, we want to start observing level 1 practices. Yes, we're going to pull out all of the hot gas components. Our rotor will still be left in. We'll maintain level 1 on the combustion end prior to combustion rebuild. Always FME device log, always putting in FME covers and plugs where appropriate. Generators or generator coolers. As soon as we start to open them, we have a drop log in use. Report any dropped items immediately. Again, so we start to uncover all pipings, all systems, cover. Cover with an FME bag. Disassembly of the bearings will start that FME level 1 at that bearing. FME level 1 will be maintained throughout the outage, beginning right at the plane of the generator. The buffer zone will be back from that. And as always, we always have an FME device log, especially for our bearings, bearing drain covers, plugs. An example of a generator, you see the orange FME barrier tape begins right at the plane. It includes the bearing. We limit the amount of materials in. We have to log all the materials in and out. Best to have a person on the outside with the logbook helping you, hand you the things one at a time, hand the things to you and keep a log of it. As it comes out, log it out. In our generator areas, due to the distance between the two ends, we'll probably have a book at the collector end, a book for the turbine end. When we pull out the coolers, we'll probably put a book at the coolers. Just an overview, when you look at your generator, you see a load compartment. You see that the FME level 1, the deep purple here, including the bearings, is your FME. It's right at the plane of the generator. Your buffer zone, this load compartment here on the left. The collector cab on the right. That's where you limit the amount of material and tools that come in there. You designate your access areas. So what do we mean by an FME level 1? FME level 1, generally established when a final visual inspection cannot be completed for the open system. When you can't just readily reach in and grab something. When you can't readily see all the areas. Generally, if we look at a gas turbine inlet, we can see everywhere. We could reach up and grab anything in a corner. We don't use that as a level 1. However, hot gas path. The lower half components are already in. The rotor is in. Anything over that turbine from that turbine shell in should be level 1. You want to log anything that passes beyond the plane and make sure it's brought out properly and make sure your log reflects that. Level 2. Implemented when a final visual inspection can be completed. When a dropped object can easily or readily be removed. Here we talk about the buffer zone. Here it says 2 to 5 feet away from your FME boundary itself, that level 1 or level 2 boundary. And the idea is it gives you a buffer. You try to limit the tooling and materials there. It can be staged there, but you try to limit it so it doesn't get into that FME level 1. An FME device or an FME barrier, that's usually your hardware. It's a plug. It's the magnetic strips that blocks objects from entering into the piping or system. The logs. These are the sheets that we use to document the tools or equipment that comes into our FME level 1 area. Now, generally, as you know, we make a tab for each individual person. He has his own sheet in there. And if we have a third party, that's generally what they do also. They ask you your name, they turn to your tab, they look at your sheet, what are you bringing in, they help you log what you're bringing in. And when you come out, ask your name, turn to your tab, they see your log, what you've brought in, and they make sure that it's logged out. Or if anything is not logged out, they bring it to everybody's attention and we try to locate that object. And then the drop log. Drop log is just used to account for things that are dropped so we can get them retrieved. And it may be during disassembly that it gets dropped or slipped down a piping. We document it, we get the information, where, when, what is it, okay, about where is it at, so that we can get it retrieved, or when we finish opening up the rest of the system, we can reach in and retrieve it. Then we'll fill out the drop log. Yes, we've retrieved the item. It's no longer a dropped item. And we continue on with our outage. Good example. Beginning FME level 1. You've got the fencing that helps designate where your access point is. The signage that tells you about 100% inventory is required. It tells you go to the desk in and sign out. Example, some of the tools. We talk about loss of integrity and tool accountability. We have the drop log. We just touched on the drop log. Drop log, if you've dropped something in, or if you just happen to see something in there that you can't retrieve. May have been left over. And especially some guys that have worked the steam. They understand we look down this steam piping, and all of a sudden we found all kinds of things down here that weren't us. Get it logged. When we do the drop log, that's when we may have to get some outside help. GE Inspection Services with some good retrieval tools. It may just be that we have to take another end of the piping off and we can reach in and retrieve it ourselves. A couple of the do's and don'ts we talked about earlier, something to remind yourself of, tools. Inspect your tools you're going to use. There's nothing worse than a tool breaking and that becoming part of your FME. Here's an example of our drop log. We'll have it in our books at the station. Different examples, good, bad, FME. Of course, good, the nice FME bag, pulled tight over the flange in. We will not use the clear plastic like down here on the bottom left. Inspect your tools over here on the bottom right. Check your areas. You see at the top, in the middle. Real good example of FME. This is what we do all the time. This is what we expect, and the customers expect. Some of the questions. So when do we start this drop log? Very beginning of the outage. Starts from day one. We don't stop till the outage is complete. So when do we start these FME practices at all? Very beginning of the outage. We don't stop our FME practices till the end of the outage. Again, let me remind you, emergent work that comes up, things that weren't in the schedule, unplanned things. Think about, what do we need to do? What areas do we need to add to this FME program? Here's a well-labeled, good, controlled access point. A lot of times you'll see an FME monitor here. They'll have the books here to help you sign materials and equipment in and out. They have a bin for you to put your personal stuff if you forgot to empty your pockets. These don't always have to be monitored by a third party. Qualified people for this outage here at Dominion's Possum Point will be allowed to sign their own materials in and out. They will be accountable for their materials in and out. We'll do spot checks on the books and what's up there. Their supervisor will check at the end of every shift. Help each other out. If you got a buddy coming up with a bucket too full, ask him if he needs all this. Is he going on break before he'll ever use half of the stuff in this bucket? If so, just wait till next break to bring the half in. Or help him sign things in and out. Part of this is a training log to show who is authorized, who's trained, who's authorized to come into our outage for FME, who's coming to our FME area, and who's allowed to be a monitor. Here's part of the tool and material and equipment inventory we use. This is what we usually put in under tabs for each individual. In that, they'll put their description of the item, the time it was in, the time it was signed out, an initial that everything was accounted for. Very simple, exactly what we do. Here's part of your device log. Your supervisor and field engineer should be maintaining this in the book. Shows the location of the device, what type of device they use, whether it's magnetic strips or a plug, and then when it was removed. Just another drop log. Shows the area, the time, what was dropped, any brief description, and perhaps a recovery plan. And of course, most important, when it was retrieved. That's all we have for our FME program here, Dominion Possum Point, for spring 2015. Thank you very much.